Hey everybody, welcome back to Storytime. This week, my special guest is already looking straight at you guys and flicking his tongue, trying to figure out what's going on here. I have a baby Savanna monitor with me this week. Now, it's hard to believe, but this little guy right here, only being probably a few months old, ends up being about a 4-foot long lizard. They end up being huge. I actually have an adult at home, and they're big and they're chonky, but they are full of personality. Savanna monitors are probably one of the most common monitors that we find in captivity and as pets. A lot of times people find them as babies like this, like, oh, they're so cute, and they're running around and they're super active and they check you out. But a lot of people aren't prepared for how big a monitor actually gets and the amount of care that they're going to need. So a monitor like this is definitely going to need a larger enclosure. Usually we look at something like a minimum of 6 feet long and 2 to 3 feet wide, but definitely the larger the better. Many big monitor owners actually customize walk-in closets or bedrooms for their monitor species. Now, there are monitors found in Africa, Asia, and Australia. And we kind of lump the Asian and the Australian ones in together because they're in a similar area. And then the African one's completely different. And from a morphological standpoint, they actually look completely different. So you kind of notice with this guy, he's got kind of a wide head, a blunt nose, stubby little arms, and then kind of a fat body. But if we were looking at an Asian or an Australian monitor, they would actually have a very long, narrow face, a more slim body, and then a very, very long tail that allows them to do many things. So the Asian species have a tendency to propel through the water, do a lot of climbing on trees, and very fast running on the ground. Whereas many of the African species are more terrestrial and subterranean. Savanna monitors, particularly, primarily feed on invertebrates when they're in the wild. So, I mean, they're eating things like earthworms and snails and slugs, arthropods, pretty much like anything that's crawling underneath logs and rocks or digging under the ground, these guys are gonna eat. Whereas a lot of the Asian species eat, a lot of those same things, but they're also eating things like birds. Sometimes they're eating rodents. They also eat fish. So depending on the type of monitor you have, they actually have a very, very wide diet. And it's best to research what monitor you have and what's going to be working out for them diet-wise. Now, these guys come, again, from sub-Saharan Africa, so they can handle very warm temperatures, way up into triple digits, but also lower temperatures, too, down in the 60s. But we try to keep them in between. We like to give them a basking spot of around 95 to maybe 105 or 110, and then keep the medium ranges in about the mid-80s. Most of that depends on the size of the enclosure. So as a baby, you don't want to put him in something gigantic because he can get lost. So you want to go with something like maybe like a 20 long or a 40 breeder for a small guy like this and keep your basking spot around 90 or 95. But then when you get a big monitor and you have a much larger enclosure, then that's when you can really look at triple digits because they have the ability to get away from that basking spot. Now, he's pretty calm sitting on my hand now. He's warming up, literally absorbing up all the body heat up out of my thumb. Also, you notice the way he's looking at me. Monitors are constantly figuring things out. So if you're a fan of the Jurassic Park series like I am, you notice that the raptors, they really play them up as thinking animals and like figuring out puzzles and opening doors and everything else. They get that from the way that monitors act. Monitors do figure things out. Having trained multiple species of these guys and owned multiple species, they can figure out puzzle feeders faster than most dogs can. They start to figure out latches on doors and locks. They understand how to push doors open. They figure things out really quick, so you're always having to challenge these animals. So for mine, big guy at home, for example, I like to bury his food. So I'll dump in a couple dozen night crawlers at a time, let them burrow, and then he has to go dig them up himself and go underneath rocks. I'll hide eggs all around the place for him. Every once in a while he'll get some raw chicken, but mainly I try to stick to invertebrates. So I'll also throw roaches in there and just let the roaches wander, and then he has to hunt them. So speaking of eggs, we do have Easter coming up next week. And so I figured if I don't get a chance to read a story next week, I might as well do one this week based on Easter. This is called T-Rex Cottontail. This is a book by Lois Grambling. And basically it's about a T-Rex who decides he's going to help out the Easter Bunny because the Easter Bunny was sick and going to help him deliver. And I figure the Savanna monitor actually kind of looks a little bit like a T-Rex. At least I think they do. So I figure it's a good match with the two books here. So I'm gonna move you to my other thumb. I'm sorry, you're nice and comfy. You can get comfy there though too. All right, so we're gonna get started. Here comes T-Rex Cottontail. Oops, here we go. T-Rex was looking in the mirror. Not bad, he said, not bad at all. Just then, the doorbell rang. He answered it. It was his friends Diplodocus, Stegosaurus, and Iguanodon. Why the funny ears and big cottontail? Diplodocus asked. Tomorrow is Easter, Stegosaurus said. Not Halloween. Peter Cottontail, aka the Easter Bunny, has a cold. T-Rex said, and then he asked to deliver his eggs tomorrow. But you can't hop, Iguanodon said. I've been practicing, T-Rex said. The three friends looked around. Where are the eggs? They asked. At his house, T-Rex answered. I'm hopping down there now to get them. Diplodocus, Stegosaurus, and Iguanodon watched as T-Rex wobbled and hopped out the door. I'm afraid those eggs are in for a shell-shattering trip tomorrow, Stegosaurus said. T-Rex can practice when he gets back, Iguanodon said. Too late, Diplodocus said, looking out the window. Poor T-Rex, wobbling and hopping up the bumpy trail, he stumbled and fell, and landed kersplat on Peter Cottontail's basket full of eggs. What a mess. T-Rex walked slowly into his house. What now? His friends asked. I don't know, T-Rex answered. Suddenly, T-Rex had an idea. We'll get more eggs, he said, and color them. Then I'll have some to deliver Easter morning. Where will we get more eggs? Stegosaurus asked. Hen gave all of hers to Peter Cottontail. There must be some out there somewhere, T-Rex said. Diplodocus grabbed the empty basket. You stay here and practice, he said. We'll get the eggs. By the end of the afternoon, T-Rex had gotten the wobble out of his hop, and his friends had gotten more eggs. T-Rex was pleased. Where'd you get them, he asked. From duck and goose and turkey, Stegosaurus said, and one from screech owl. We better start coloring them now, Iguanodon said, or it won't be done till dawn. Late that night, all the eggs were colored. T-Rex and his friends were asleep and snoring. Unfortunately, when the sun came up, T-Rex and his friends were still asleep. But the children weren't. They were at the windows, awake and waiting. Shouts of, "Where are you, Easter Bunny?" could be heard. T-Rex heard them. He jumped up. He put on his funny ears, cottontail, long twitching whiskers, jacket, and bow tie. I'll save an egg for Peter Cottontail, T-Rex said to his friends. Meet me at his house later. We'll give it to him then, he said, hopping to the door. The children were still at their windows, waiting and worrying until T-Rex hopped into view. Cool, they shouted. That's one really big cottontail hopping down that bumpy trail. When all the eggs, except one, had been delivered, T-Rex started hopping back up the bumpy trail. Thanks for our eggs, Mr. Really Big Cottontail, the children called after him. Anytime, T-Rex called back. T-Rex hopped to Peter Cottontail's house. His friends were already there. Do you have the egg, they asked? T-Rex nodded and rang the doorbell. Peter Cottontail answered it. T-Rex handed Peter Cottontail the egg. For me? Peter Cottontail asked. T-Rex and his friends nodded. No one has ever given me an Easter egg before, he said. Thank you. Just then, the eggs began to crack open. Crack, crack, crack. A dozen and dozens of tiny ducks started quacking, and dozens of tiny geese started honking, and dozens of tiny turkeys started gobbling. "This is the best Easter ever," the children shouted. Then Peter Cottontail's egg began to crack open. Crack! And one tiny screech owl started screeching. Peter Cottontail was surprised and delighted. "This is the noisiest Easter ever," he said. "The noisiest and the best. I shall never forget it." "Nor shall we," said T-Rex and his friends. Happy Easter, everybody. So that was a really fun story about a friend stepping in to help another friend, because there are going to be times when all your friends at some point in their life are going to need some type of help, and so are you. And it's okay to accept the help. Peter Cottontail accepted the help, even though Easter is his job. And even though it seems silly that a big T-Rex stepped into the job, he was able to get it done. So I hope you guys enjoyed learning about our little baby Savanna monitor here, and learning how he becomes a big Savanna monitor that looks like a miniature T-Rex. And then also our book, Here Comes T-Rex Cottontail. We'll see you guys next time.